There are people who carry brilliance like a secret, not out of arrogance, but out of something quieter, something more complicated. They dim their own light in rooms where others shine. They soften their words, laugh at jokes they don't find funny, and pretend not to know things they've understood for years. This isn't modesty. It isn't humility. It's a kind of self-erasure so practiced, it becomes invisible even to them. Intelligence, when hidden, doesn't disappear, it turns inward. It becomes a companion in solitude, a burden in connection, and those who live this way often don't realize they're doing it. They only know that something feels misaligned, that they've learned to make themselves smaller in order to belong. This is the psychology of people who hide their intelligence, a quiet tragedy dressed as politeness. It starts younger than most people remember. A child raises their hand in class not to show off, but because they genuinely know the answer. The teacher calls on them, again and again, until the other kids stop raising their hands altogether, until someone whispers, "Of course she knows." The tone isn't admiration, it's something else, something that makes the child's stomach twist, or maybe it's at the dinner table. A teenager corrects a fact gently, without thinking, and the room goes quiet. A parent's face hardens, a sibling rolls their eyes. The message is wordless but clear. You're making this uncomfortable. Stop. This is where it begins. Not with a decision, but with a feeling. The feeling that intelligence, when expressed, creates distance. That knowing too much makes you difficult. That being right makes you unequally. And so, slowly, carefully, they learn to dim. They learn to pause before answering, to let someone else speak first, to laugh along with explanations they don't need, to ask questions they already know the answers to, just to make others feel useful. It becomes a reflex, a social choreography so smooth, no one notices it's happening, not even them, but underneath, something else is forming, a belief, quiet and corrosive. If I show who I really am, I will be too much, and if I'm too much, I'll be left behind. Psychologists call this social masking, the conscious or unconscious suppression of one's true self, to fit into a group. But for intelligent people, the mask isn't just about personality, it's about capacity. It's about pretending you don't see patterns others miss, that you don't notice contradictions, that you're not bored by conversations that loop in circles. It's a specific kind of erasure, one that doesn't just hide difference, it hides depth, and it's reinforced everywhere. In schools that reward conformity over curiosity, in workplaces that punish those who ask too many questions, in friendships where vulnerability is welcome but intellect feels like a threat. The world, in small and constant ways, teaches smart people that their sharpness is a flaw, that it alienates, that it should be softened, sweetened, disguised. So they do. They stop using certain words. They dumb down their explanations. They nod along to ideas they find shallow, because disagreement feels like arrogance. They become translators of their own thoughts, always converting, always simplifying, always making themselves easier to digest. And here's the cruelest part. It works. People like them more, or at least, they think they do. They're seen as humble, easygoing, not intimidating. They get invited to things. They're included. They belong, but belonging, when it's built on a lie, is its own kind of loneliness, because the person people like isn't really them. It's a version, a performance, and deep down, they know it. They feel it every time they hold back a thought, every time they watch someone struggle with a problem they could solve in seconds, but don't, because offering help feels like showing off. Every time they sit in a meeting and bite their tongue, because speaking up might make them look like they think that better than everyone else. That, the irony is, suffocating. They hide their intelligence to avoid being seen as arrogant, but the act of hiding makes them feel more isolated than arrogance ever could. They shrink themselves to be loved, but the love they receive is for someone who doesn't fully exist. And over time, the mask stops feeling like a choice. It becomes automatic, instinctive. They forget they're even wearing it, until one day, they're alone, really alone, and they realize they've become so good at pretending to be less, they've forgotten how to be whole. This is the origin, not rebellion, not pride, just a child who learned, too early, that the world prefers them quieter, smaller, safer, and the tragedy isn't that they hid, it's that they believed they had to. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from living at half-volume. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't crash over you all at once. It accumulates slowly, quietly, like dust settling on something you forgot was bright. You wake up one day and realize you're tired, not from doing too much, but from being too little. This is what it feels like to hide your intelligence every single day. Every conversation becomes a calculation. You listen to someone explain something incorrectly, and you have to decide, do I correct them, or let it go? You're in a meeting, and someone proposes a solution you know won't work, but if you point it out, you'll be the difficult one, the one who always has something to say. So you stay quiet, you let it happen, you watch the mistake unfold, knowing you could have stopped it, and you swallow the frustration like medicine. Because speaking up isn't just about being right, it's about being seen as someone who always needs to be right, and that label know-it-all, smartass, try hard, it sticks. It follows. It makes people pull away, so you don't risk it. You've learned to translate yourself in real time, to take a complex thought and flatten it into something digestible, to strip away the nuance, the layers, the parts that excite you because those parts make others uncomfortable. You've become fluent in a language that isn't yours, and the cost of that fluency is this. You forget how to speak your native tongue. You forget what it feels like to say exactly what you mean, without softening it first on, and the loneliness that comes from this, it's not the kind people recognize. You're not isolated. You have friends, colleagues, maybe even a partner. You're surrounded by people, but none of them know you. Not really. They know the version of you that's been edited for the one who laughs at the right times, agrees at the right moments, never makes anyone feel less than. But the you underneath, the one who sees connections others don't, who gets excited by ideas, who thinks in webs instead of lines, that person has no one to talk to. Psychologists describe this as intellectual loneliness. It's the ache of having thoughts no one around you shares, of being hungry for depth in a world that prefers surface. It's not about arrogance. It's about resonance, about wanting, just once, to speak without translation, to be met where you are, instead of always walking back to where others stand. But here's the paradox. The very thing you hide is the thing you long to share. You crave connection, but only if it's real. Only if it's with someone who won't flinch when you show them the full scope of how you think. And because that feels so rare, you stop looking, you stop trying, you convince yourself it's safer this way, that wanting to be understood is asking too much, that you're better off alone with your thoughts than risking the rejection of being too much in front of someone else, so you retreat inward. Your intelligence, once a tool for connecting with the world, becomes a private companion, a thing you engage with only in solitude, through books, research, late-night spirals down rabbit holes no one else cares about. It's yours. It's safe, but it's also suffocating, because intelligence isn't meant to be hoarded, it's meant to be exchanged, challenged, sharpened against other minds. And when you hide it, you don't just lose connection with others, you lose connection with yourself. You start to resent it, this thing that makes you different, this thing you've spent years trying to bury. You resent the effort it takes to pretend, the constant self, the way you replay conversations later, wondering if you said too much, or not enough. Or if you came across as condescending when all you were trying to do was contribute. You resent the people who don't have to think this way, the ones who speak freely, without fear, who don't calculate every sentence before it leaves their mouth. You resent them for their ease, and then you resent yourself for resenting them. It's a cycle, and it's exhausting, but somewhere, underneath all of that, underneath the performance and the politeness and the crushing weight of making yourself small, there's a realization beginning to form. A quiet, uncomfortable truth. This isn't protecting you, it's erasing you. Hiding your intelligence doesn't make you safer. It doesn't make you more loved. It just makes you invisible. And the cost of that invisibility, the friendships that never go deep, the conversations that never satisfy, the career opportunities you don't take because you've trained yourself not to stand out, it's too high, you can feel it now. The gap between who you are and who you've been pretending to be. And it's widening, and for the first time, maybe, you start to wonder, what would happen if you stopped? Not all at once, not recklessly, but slowly, carefully. What would happen if you let yourself be seen just a little more than before? What would happen if you trusted that the people worth keeping are the ones who won't be threatened by your mind? It's terrifying, but it's also something else. It's the beginning of coming back to yourself.